you know about her?
They say she practices witchcraft.
It's going crazy because of me.
There's got to be something buried.
Secrets.
Help me.
Our family has done something.
Get out! You shouldn't have done this!
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for talking to me today.
Oh yeah, awesome.
Total thrill.
Awesome.
So, well, let's talk about Union Bridge. Let's talk about you. You started your film career making movies with your friends when you were 11 years old. Sounds like me, because I went to film school at UNLV here, but I started out making, in my day, 8mm films and things like that.
Right. Yeah. I know. We with my friends and just people in the neighborhood, we would make these kind of comedy sketches. With just the big video cameras, and we would shoot the scenes in order so we didn't have to edit and stuff like that. Yeah, that's how I started making content.
And it also led to a passion for writing as well.
Yeah, exactly. So kind of started off really as a hobby, and I also did that a little bit in college, working with like campus TV stations. And then as I got deeper into it, I really realized I was interested in, how movies were written and things like that. And so then I went to graduate school to get a master's essentially in screenwriting.
Yeah, you got a storybook success story. You went to New York, and some of your clients, it's like a who's who.
Yeah, it's been an interesting ride. I mean, the entertainment industry is a pretty crazy thing. So, if you can kind of stay on your feet in it, it's pretty exciting.
Sketch comedy for Adult Swim to a gothic thriller. Talk about a leap.
Yeah. So I guess my interests have always been pretty, obviously, very wide in terms of film and television. I mean, I grew up, watching The Simpsons and, In Living Color and, all sorts of stuff in the comedy space. And then as I kind of got a little bit older, I started getting into people like the Coen brothers and Tim Burton and people like that who had a bit more of like a cinematic sense to them. So overall, I think I've just been enjoying those types of movies, whatever, and shows, whatever the genre. I started off in the comedy space because I think that's where I kind of got initial momentum. Kind of the barrier to entry was a little bit lower because I started putting up these comedy videos on YouTube so I could go directly to the audience and people responded. And this was when YouTube was really just starting. So that's how that began.
And for Union Bridge, it's about family secrets and a lot of digging.
Yes, there's a lot of digging in a small town for family secrets. Yeah, that's the central plot. I mean, it's not like a plot-heavy movie. I think as you saw, it's a lot of it is about atmosphere and mood and kind of how does this town feel, which was really the goal of it. But I wanted enough plot in there with them looking for whatever was possibly buried in the ground to have the audience engaged in a way that moved the story forward.
And I love Will's mother. She's just fantastic. I mean, where did you find her? At first I thought it was Ellen Bernstein. I really did, but she was just fantastic.
She's actually very interesting. So I had a couple casting directors. One of them was from New York and one of them was in Baltimore. And the one in Baltimore, because we shot this in Maryland, the one in Baltimore, her name is Pat Moran, and she's a famous casting director. She's casted everything from all of John Waters' films, to The Wire, Barry Levinson, all the stuff that gets made in Baltimore that's really good. Pat Moran's casting. And so I hired her, and she brought in people, and she said, look, you have to hire Elizabeth Noon for Jeannie. She is perfect for it. And so I was like, well, yeah, I got to see a bunch of people first, but, I'll keep an eye out for her. And so she came in and she was just brilliant. I mean, as you can see, she's really menacing, but she keeps it natural enough and real enough that she feels like a real evil person and not a caricature of an evil person.
And I think what's a great element to the movie is the musical score. It's haunting, and it really enhances the mood.
This movie I got very lucky on with a few things, and well, a lot of things really. It was kind of a weird, miraculous journey. Like, hard to believe it's even here. But in terms of the music, there was one of the guys who had done sound on the movie. Also had was involved in a recording studio in New York, and we got to talking, and he got the vibe of the movie, and him and his partner up in New York basically, did part of the soundtrack and or part of the score, and the other part of the score, I ended up editing the film in Baltimore, and someone turned me on to this guy who was a folk singer down here. And so if you see the movie, the sound of the movie is kind of this weird mix between this almost Neil Young, rural, natural sound, but also mixed with like this industrial, creepy sound. And that's because I had the guys from Baltimore and the guys from New York collaborating.
Hey, I know Will owns a car in the movie, so why do you have him walk everywhere? Sometimes miles at a time. He's walking everywhere. This
is true. I think I just like movies where people walk around. Like, it's like the European movies. There's like an Italian director, Antonioni, and a lot of people don't. Particularly these days, a lot of people would find his movies too slow, which they are slow. But he's really amazing the way he creates tone and atmosphere. And part of the way he does that is he just has these characters walking through these landscapes, and so you're kind of forced, in a sense, to be with them. You're forced to pay attention to them because nothing else is happening. So it was a little bit of that. And then also like some of Terrence Malick's films, there's a lot of, people walking. I think it's a way to capture landscape, so that it feels like they're in a real place.
And I think the town's a character itself. Where did you shoot this film? It reminds me of Mayberry. I want to visit.
Union Bridge is interesting. So I grew up about 20 minutes away from Union Bridge. And I remember maybe 10 years ago, I never been to Union Bridge. It's a very small town at the border of Pennsylvania and Maryland where the Civil War was fought in the Mason-Dixon line. And I happened, like 10 years ago, I just started driving around the county. I think I was just trying to, get inspired to write something. And I came across this town that had this, menacing factory that overlooked everything from the main street to the graveyard. And the town itself looked like it hadn't, changed in 50 years. And I thought, this is just a really interesting location. It had such a weird, cool feeling to it. And so I just stored that in the back of my mind that town existed and was interesting. And then as I started to write the story for this movie, which was originally titled The Land, and I started to write The Land, and then I thought, I got to shoot this in Union Bridge. It's the perfect town for it.
And some of your drone shots were just spectacular. And there was this dome building next to the factory. What was that? It was driving me crazy.
It's all, I don't know. It's all connected to this huge cement factory that I started to look at, like the numbers of the amount of cement that it produces every day. And it's like mind boggling. It's like, well, that's also part of the story a little bit, is like, if you think about it, so much of the world is just these massive industrial organizations that are just constantly churning out things and making a ton of money and having so much power, but it's all kind of quiet. It's all, it's all away from your prying eyes. It's all, not that there's anything that they're doing wrong, but it's like, there's this whole world of power behind the scenes. And, I think the factory and the owners of the factory, the Shipes, symbolize, essentially, the people who rule the world, and everybody else is, you're kind of you're just a pawn in the game.
And whose job was it to dig that big hole at the end?
Yeah, we had, I'm trying to remember exactly how we had it. I think we had one of my parents, they knew someone in the county who came out and, with a tractor or with a bulldozer type thing. I don't know, just, dug it up. And my one concern was like, could Will reasonably dig this big of a hole? So the whole time I'm sitting there, like looking at it, thinking like, I don't want us to come to the last moments of the movie, and it looks like this outrageous thing that no one person could ever dig. So I then consulted with people who had been in that, you know, area of construction. And I said, if a guy had, you know, this amount of time and a shovel, could he possibly dig this? And so we looked at it and we took off some of the stuff and made it look like, and got it to the point where we said, okay, that's reasonable.
Every Western has that, from Treasure to Sierra Madre. They all dig their graves or they dig for gold. It's very plausible, very plausible.
Exactly.
And finally today, tell me about the first shot on the first day and the last shot on the last day of your film.
Well, both of those are very clear in my mind, because this is the first time I directed. So the experience was, I've produced and I've written, but directing is a different animal. And so the first shot was on the porch with the guys on the porch, the two older gentlemen. And we actually didn't use the first couple shots that we shot because my directing, the movie has a specific tone. I'm sure you felt that, right? And it's a bizarre tone and it's very idiosyncratic and you're not really sure what's going on. And the first scene, I hadn't figured out how to get the performances to hit that tone. I was trying to, but I hadn't, it took me a minute to do it. So the first scene of the movie, actually, we didn't even use. It was the only thing we didn't use. And it talks a little bit more about, that first scene actually that we didn't use talks more about like how Will's family, his grandfather was a governor and he comes from this kind of political lineage and that he's, you know, things like that, which you get a little bit. And then the last scene was out on the field and it was so cold, you know, we were shooting the final, which was actually the final scene of the movie with the gold coming up. And it was so cold that it was just a challenge to make sure that, you know, we were all able to complete the task because it was late at night and not an easy last shot.
The character of Mary, I see she had a blanket on, so that was true life.
Yeah, that was difficult because there was this, you know, weird balancing act between like, okay, we want to make sure the last scene looks good, but at the same time, everybody has to stay safe. So how do we balance, you know, everybody's safety and comfort with the reality that this is the climax of the movie, so we got to make it look good. So, but that's part of, I think, being a director is, you know, you really having to make decisions in the moment where there are a lot of different variables going on, and trying to make the best decisions you can.
Well, the movie's Union Bridge, and this is director Brian Levin. Brian, congratulations, man. You made your first feature film, and that's no small task.
Thank you, and thanks for watching.
My pleasure, and let's talk again soon.
All right, see ya.